Robyn.
Mia Blitzstein, present.
Pam Henry, present.
Okay. I'm asking for a motion to approve the minutes from the January Educational Affairs meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
I told you, you'll never have to ask for a second. Seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so I am turning the meeting over to Dr. Smith.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight's presentation is a strategic plan update, and I do have a few disclaimers before we begin. While this is a mid-year and air quotes update, I do want to express that this is a little, depending on what the timeline that you're referencing, could be a little longer than mid-year, a little shorter than mid-year, because of the lapse of time of the approval of the strategic plan once we got started with the strategic plan. So if there are some questions as we progress through the presentation around timing, timeline, around completion of different items, please keep in mind that we have not had a full complement of everything in place for the strategic plan due to, again, when it was board approved, when things were put together. And so each individual speaker will be able to speak to their respective timelines as we go on. And as always, we start with the mission statement and vision statement. And just want to take a quick pause with this slide really quickly, just to get some insight. Dr. Scriven and I had a meeting today with one of our cultural proficiency and equity partners, and one of the things that they pointed out was Cheltenham's vision statement being very unique in that we do bring up the concept of justice. So I did want to acknowledge that for tonight's meeting, since that conversation took place early this afternoon. Just as a quick overview, as you know, most of you do know to this point, for those who are new to the plan, this was a 3-step plan development process. Phase 1 was to engage, phase 2, focus, phase 3, execute. And we are in the execute specific stage. We're implementing things that we said we would execute. And as you all recall, there were multiple stakeholders, multiple meetings, multiple opportunities to give input during the 3-step plan development process. So in essence, the strategic plan does not belong specifically to the superintendent or belong to administrators in Cheltenham. It really truly belongs to the entire Cheltenham School District community. And with that, just as a quick reminder, we have 7 strategic plan pillars. And as you can see, these pillars are kind of holding up the ultimate goal, which is the roof of our structure, is where excellence begins with education. So we have these pillars that are kind of holding up the structure, and then we have some more detailed information at the bottom that serves as the foundation. And this particular graphic can be found on our website as a part of our official strategic plan if people want to look further after tonight's presentation. Again, for those of you who again are either new to the process or need a reminder, those 7 pillars are portrait of a graduate, teaching and learning, social, emotional, and mental health, diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion, climate and culture for student success, communications, and last but not least, infrastructure, facilities, and finance. In order to make sure that each of these pillars receive the attention and the focus that they needed, we do have different leaders in charge of each pillar. Just so people are aware, we had leaders who helped to plan the pillars, and now we've kind of shifted the leadership of the pillars in terms of leaders who implement the pillars. So you may see different leadership that we saw in the planning stage, and the reason being is Dr. Scriven really wanted central office administrators to own this and to help with the implementation and monitoring and supervision of these pillars at the school level. And with that, we are starting with pillar 1, portrait of a graduate. And I would just ask my fellow presenters to be prepared to come to either of the front seats when it is your time to present. And Dr. Scriven has taken the central office lead on portrait of a graduate. So he is up first. And with that, I will turn things over to Superintendent Scriven.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. So I got summoned to the hot seat, so everybody can get ready because I am going to vacate after my presentation. So, portrait of a graduate. First and foremost, I have to acknowledge Dr. Smith and just her work and her leadership. To be quite honest, her and her team are the ones that have really upheld a lot of these pillars. I did not know that she would be transitioning, but she had so much that was on her. I volunteered to kind of own this portrait of a graduate, and that was before I even knew that we were going where we currently are. I'm always transparent with both the board and the community. This is an initiative that cannot be done in isolation. I'm going to give you guys a high level of what I envision and where I see this going. But I'm actually going to bring someone before you in the near future who's going to really help facilitate this process. Dr. Chad Walmack is someone that the board had tried to use, that had tried to partner with the Office of Education and Dr. Marseille when he was here as superintendent. He actually graduated with me or a year after, but I kind of was his, what's the word I want to use? Big brother in high school. So he owes us and the district. By no means am I saying he's going to be free, so that is not the case. But in the spring, we're going to be coming together really to put a committee together. Dr. Raleigh and members of the team are really going to play an intricate role. We do have something that is very unique already in Cheltenham, and that's our PBL program. I am also just really trying to elevate our whole work around innovation in STEM to another level. And as we always question ourselves, what sets us apart, right? So part of that work that him and his team are going to do is really take a deep dive of really doing an audit of our instructional programs K through 12 and what sets us apart. That work is not going to be done with them solely. We need the practitioners in our district to be at the table. We just had a meeting today where we I kind of presented to our principals and administrators that we would be reaching out to folks to be a part of this work. So let me go over what I have just real quick and kind of you guys just kind of envision where we are. So as I see this portrait of a graduate, it's our vision is to empower students to become engaged, resilient, and collaborative lifelong learners who are prepared for success in both higher education and the workforce. We aspire to cultivate graduates who are critical thinkers, effective communicators, culturally competent individuals, and responsible citizens, contributing to the well-being of our communities. There are several core competencies. A lot of this we have within our instructional program right now, but I think we have to be a little more deliberate with how we are packaging it and presenting it. So we're going to be taking a deep look at the academic excellence. I'll just give you one bullet of each of these. Mastery of Pennsylvania State Standards in English, Language Arts, Mathematics, Science, and Social Studies. Let me give you the second. Critical thinking skills developed through inquiry-based learning, problem solving, and analytical reasoning. We have that already, but what is that going to look like in the K through 12 continuum? That's part of what we have to define and haven't started the work. That's what we're going to be starting this spring as we move forward. Career readiness, exploration of diverse career pathways align with individual interests and aptitudes. Application of industry-specific skills through hands-on experiences, internships, and project-based learning. Oh, that keeps coming up. Doc has been working on a piece that I'm gonna try to get from her before she transitions, because I don't want to use her upper Marion. No, I think it's as relevant to Cheltenham. But you remember, and I shared it with you guys, that big document that you guys had, which showed all of the programs and the pathways for Cheltenham. It went back to probably the early 2000s. I got one from a parent. It was so fragile, I couldn't even make a copy of it because that's how old it was. But there has been work already under Dr. Smith's leadership that kind of encompasses what that looks like in totality. But now I got to push it out to a full team. So it's different artifacts that we'll be pulling in together and just taking a look at with ultimately what is our final model going to look like. Effective communication, proficiency in written and oral communication, including ability to articulate ideas clearly and persuasively. Cultural competency, exposure to diverse perspectives and global perspectives. So it's more than just the academics. What we want to point out is, where do these other competencies fall within the scope and sequence of our portrait of a graduate? Digital literacy. Where does digital literacy fall? Competence in leveraging technology for learning, problem solving, and communication. A lot of this we're doing, but how do we call it out where everybody can see where it falls and it just jumps out on the page? Collaboration and leadership, I don't think I need to go into. Community engagement is something that our students are extremely active in right now. Then we will shift to implementation strategies, this whole integrated curriculum. Align curriculum with Pennsylvania state standards, incorporating project-based and experimental learning opportunities, embed career exploration and readiness. We're already doing bits and pieces of this, but it's kind of siloed a little bit. I just want it fluid, where someone can see as they're matriculating through exactly where a pathway could take them. How will professional development line with all of this? Because all of this is going to have to come with PD. Partnerships with industry. I need to know, where can we go and find that? We're doing that. I can't lay my hands on it right now. I know we have it. Technology integration, I mentioned, extracurricular activities, individualized career planning. Yes, we do some of that through Naviance, but how do we backwardly map to start that work and those conversations with our kids in the earlier years so that they have a very clear perspective and direction in terms of what they're aspiring to do and be. And then assessments and reflection, which are always critical. I have a piece, and I'll just go over this real quick. So I just looked at kindergarten, right? So part of what we're going to be doing is looking at what are the skills that students are going to need to have in order to demonstrate mastery before they matriculate to the next grade. So for kindergarten, what skills should they be able to demonstrate prior to going to first grade? Reading, foundation skills, for example. Recognize and name uppercase and lowercase letters. Associate sounds with each letter. Demonstrate phonemic awareness by identifying rhyming words. That's just an example. Then I go phonics and word recognition, listening and speaking, language, writing. It's all broken down. That's what we want as part of the continuum when we're looking at portrait of a graduate, in terms of making that very micro and not macro. And then the last piece, because I know I'm under the clock, but Doc is giving me, for being first, a little leeway, is this whole piece. It's another prong when I really want to, along with how students are going to be matriculating and demonstrating mastery along the way, I want to attach the parent university model to that, right? So what are parents, what type of wraparound resources will they need to help their students navigate as they're going through the whole continuum? Early childhood education, K through 5. It may be developmental milestones, workshops on understanding and supporting the cognitive, emotional, and social development of children in the early years. It could be literacy and numeracy workshops, tips and strategies for fostering literacy and numeracy skills at home. Let's look at high school, for instance. Navigating the high school years, college and career planning. What will their role look like? Workshops on navigating the application process, financial aid, and exploring career pathways. It could be around guidance with standardized testing. So I'm giving you guys just the hypotheticals so you can see it, but this is me in isolation, right? I have a framework. I always have to have a framework, but the framework only is what I see as a vision, as a guiding point. It's not a final point because I got to bring in the collaborative component. So just stand ready, because some of you may also have that opportunity to give some input. As I've been looking at doing some things also a little differently with you as a board. But this is where we are right now as Portrait of a Graduate. Once I unpack all of this, this will become part of our branding piece as well, because it's going to clearly highlight all the wonderful things that we have to offer as a district. So that's it for me, though. So I got more. Oh, all right, next slide. I didn't want to, project status, I don't even want to get into my little 4% because it's conceptualized right now. But these are just the highlights of where we're going. The 2023 student perception data is something, I guess, that can be shared. And this whole PBL is going to be the work that we're doing moving forward. So that just kind of puts it in a nice tight ribbon.
And if I may, just for the good of the group, the charts that you see on the left, these charts come from a program that we are using to keep our strategic plan tasks and completion in. That's called Proof Hub. So we all have access to Proof Hub. And so as Dr. Scriven mentioned, his project status is 4% complete, which is actually, let me explain what that 4% complete means. What it means is anything within Portrait of a Graduate that's 100% done. And I kind of started off saying that, you know, because of the timeline, because of the different efforts that go into this, 4% it should not be seen as, okay, 4% of 100% is a really low number. This is accurately what has been completed. And because we just started on this strategic plan journey, it is expected, and you're going to see, I can tell you right now, my strand is at 0, because my strand for diversity and equity, for example, it is a work in progress. We're not at any point where we're final, but we did want to give the board and the public some numbers and to give them an idea of how we'll quantify this moving forward. So this is just a very, very beginning, but because everything is going into the system, we will be able to tell you how many tasks have been completed per group. And what also, and Dr. Riley helped me understand this earlier, because I'm like, why am I 0? But under each task, you can also have subtasks. So your subtask can be done where you laid the framework, you laid the groundwork to get things done, but we're not quite ready to say that they're complete. So the charts that you're going to see on the left are generated from Proof Hub, and it's a little skewed in terms of like the milestones. We don't have any milestones, right? Because we haven't kind of reached that point yet. So we're showing those charts, and the bottom chart is more like a graph to kind of show you where we are. We showed these charts for the purpose of the board and the community knowing that we do have a quantifiable data instrument where we're collecting all of this data. So when you say, how do you know you finished this? We'll be able to peel back the layers in Proof Hub.
And I think the one interesting thing will be, like, so once we go through Portrait of a Graduate, that's one layer. We then will decide, do we want to do a portrait of a leader? You know, there's so many different evolutions that we can go through. So this, when we truly say continuous improvement, this is going to be continuous improvement. Am I okay now?
Yes.
Pillar 2, teaching and learning, will be presented by Dr. Riley. And as you can see, our co-chairs are Ms. Collins and Dr. Riley. Dr. Riley is going to present for the group.
Can I stay here or do I need to?
You can absolutely.
So teaching and learning is an extension, and a lot of the action tasks that you're going to see here overlap with the goals of Portrait of a Graduate. You'll see that throughout the entire strategic plan. There are lots of areas where tasks are overlapping across those plans, which makes a lot of sense because we're doing this collectively with the entire district. And so we came up with just a single primary goal focused on our students around student success. Work that needs to be done in designing rigorous curriculum, instituting instructional best practices. And then one of the things that we're spending time at now is looking at the different programs, programming platforms that we have, and trying to understand the impact of those. It's something that's come up at various meetings. And so we want to be meaningful in the program and principal environments that we're using to instruct our students and engage them in the learning process. We have essentially two strategies where we're dividing this work across curriculum development and then also the creation of a system of continuous improvement. And then the way we're going to know when we're successful, that we are being successful, we're on the path towards success, is twofold as well. So in terms of curriculum design, looking for a fully developed curriculum website that is a resource for not just our staff, but our students as well as our families. And then on the other side, in terms of continuous improvement, having a robust data accountability plan that we can share again with all of our stakeholders. And there's transparency across the data that we are collecting and therefore using in terms of analysis to make informed decisions around our instructional best practices. So a couple highlights. As Dr. Smith explained, there's a lot of tasks, a lot of subtasks, and as we're moving through the process of implementing this plan, we're finding more opportunities for adding to this. And so far, the work that we've done in curriculum, and this is a continuation from the previous strategic plan as well, and then formalizing work in the core content areas of ELA, math, science, and social studies. Identifying courses, there's a lot of courses where we have a need for curriculum. And so trying to target which courses are we going to work on today. Instead of saying we have to work on all of it, we're trying to chunk that work and identify what's happening now in year one of this plan. And we'll do the same thing for year 2 and year 3. And so we've done that piece already in terms of identifying those courses to be worked on for this current school year. We're working through a curriculum evaluation tool so that as we are developing curriculum, have we met all the standards that we need to meet in order to say this curriculum is completed and we're ready for implementation. There's a couple different facets to that. There's some tools that we found that already exist that we're adopting and then adapting to make sure we're covering everything. Some of the other action tasks in the teaching and learning plan include making sure we have access for all of our special ed students in terms of the curriculum. And so we want that to be part of the curriculum evaluation tool, but it's its own task as well. Another one was the inclusion of environmental literacy across all content areas. And again, that'll be part of that evaluation tool, but it's its own task as well. And then the last piece is identifying the curriculum design teams for those courses that we have identified that will be worked on. And so we have done that at both the elementary level and the secondary. On the other side of teaching and learning is the data system or system of continuous improvement. We started with the fact that there's a lot of work to be done in that area, and we needed help in doing that. And so we've hired 2 data and curriculum specialists. You've met both Ms. Farrar and Ms. Berman before, and so they're on board now with helping move that work forward. We have done an inventory of all of our data resources. We have done that just about every year to make sure we are including everything. We're currently looking at a new system to manage that as well. We're just getting started with that work. With a lot of the efforts led by Dr. Pimental, we've implemented continuous full improvement professional learning for our principals as well as our teachers. And so a lot of our early dismissal Wednesdays are being spent in this continuous full improvement professional learning work. We are taking every data set that we can get our hands on and we're putting it into Linkit. We are using Linkit as our data warehouse. For those that aren't aware, we want to make sure that if we are collecting data about a student, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, it's accessible in Linkit so that when teachers, principals are looking at students, they have a complete data profile of who our students are. We recently launched the parent and student portal in Linkit, and so parents and students now have access into Linkit to see some of that data. We're testing this out to see what other data we want to include, so we'll be asking for feedback at some point in terms of developing what that portal is going to entail moving forward. We're also utilizing a tool called Intervention Manager in Linkit, specifically designed for MTSS, but there are other features to Intervention Manager that can be used for other grouping actions, essentially, for both teachers and principals as well. And then the last two, terms of building a system of continuous improvement, there's two things that we want to be able to do, and that is make our data visual rather than looking at charts or very common column charts or pie charts, but something that's more interactive and more telling the story of where we are in terms of our performance. So we're looking at a variety of data visualization tools. I just found out on Friday that Linkit is about to unveil their data visualization tool, which is part of the package that we already have access to. And then the second thing is taking those visualization tools and creating dashboards that we can share with all of our stakeholder groups. Again, making those interactive. And so parents, students, teachers, principals can look at the data that they need to look at to help them think about what we're doing in terms of continuous improvement, what we're doing in terms of development and instruction, and what we're doing in terms of portrait of regret. That is it for teaching and learning.
If I could just jump in, we're really trying to make the process very concrete, where you can take portrait of a graduate and parents will know specifically based on what students should be able to demonstrate mastery on, where their child is in that continuum based on the data portal that we're working on creating. So it's really just triangulating and being transparent with it. This is it. This is our reality, and it's for everyone to see.
Pillar 3, our co-chairs for Pillar 3, Ms. Jessica King and Dr. Cheryl Horsey, and Ms. King is here to present on behalf of the team.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because we already talked about MTSS earlier in the year, but I'll talk about some exciting steps that we've taken over the last couple of months as it pertains to social, emotional, and mental health and this strategic plan pillar. So our goal is just to implement a robust system of in-school supports and services for our students with the overall goal of increasing our academic outcomes. We also have to look at the whole child, and part of that is their social, emotional, and their mental health. And we all know schools are so much more than educational entities. We also take a large part in socialization of our students. And so we want to make sure that we have supports and services that we can implement in the classroom and outside of the classroom to support our students in those endeavors so that they can master socialization. I know that's easier said than done, especially with the students and the screens all the time. So some of the performance measures that we are looking at is our district emergency report forms. Anytime there is a crisis in the building, we have an emergency report form that is sent to myself and sent to Dr. Smith to review, just to ensure all the proper steps were taken. So we're looking at the count of forms that we're getting within a school year to see if we are supporting our students in the classrooms or if it's needing to escalate to a counselor. So we're looking at that data set. And then for the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, when we originally did the strategic plan, we were looking at the data from the 21-22 school year, but we have since completed the survey again this school year in November. So we will be able to review that data when it comes out probably in the next couple of weeks. We already have our preliminary data that we were able to analyze this year. And then we have our pre and post surveys for our SEL programmatic initiatives. At Elkins Park, we did Too Good for Drugs again, which is a SEL curriculum that starts with the pre-test and ends with the post-test. So we'll be able to look at that data to see how effective that program was for the students that are at Elkins Park. We're looking at our student academic and behavioral data in the confines of our multi-tier system of support. So we're looking at all of that data when we are discussing students at our advanced tiers meetings. And so some of the highlights, again, we have introduced a new MTSS template that all of our buildings should be using at this point. We've been going and following up, and I know even when the principals had their discussion, many of them mentioned their MTSS processes. Central office provides support as well for those meetings. So that has been introduced, and then we have created an MTSS toolkit with the major assistance of our data and curriculum specialists. They took 2 documents that we already had housed, they combined them, and so now we have a toolkit, we have a framework that we can provide to our staff as to what MTSS is, why we do it, and then the task at hand for us as we close out the year is to provide resources and interventions for our staff to use in the building. So something that they have right at their fingertips, they can click on it. This behavior is happening. What can I implement within my classroom that will be a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 level of support? So we will be working on that to include in this toolkit as well. As Dr. Riley mentioned, we're putting a strong emphasis on the use of intervention manager as we track our MTSS data. We have started tier 1 trainings with all of our school buildings and staff so that they know how to access intervention manager in Lincoln. And they also know how to access the tier 1 checklist, which is the baseline. So if they're having a student that they are seeing concerns, whether it's academic or behavior, they go into Lincoln, they pull up their tier 1 checklist, and it's kind of a checklist for them to say, well, what have I actually tried? How long have I tried it? Have I done it with fidelity? Am I seeing any difference? And then once they go through that form, if they're seeing that there's no difference in the student's behavior, then they can do a request for assistance. So all of our building staff are being trained on how to access those documents in Lincoln. And then we are also going to be having advanced tiers training, tier 2 and tier 3 for our actual MTSS teams. So they know how to get that information from Lincoln and then what they then do with it when they get a request for assistance. We utilized the universal screener this year for behavior as another data source as we are discussing students within the MTSS process. We have 2 crisis interventionists, which I mentioned in my presentation earlier this year. I would say that they have been extremely helpful in dealing with the in the moment crisis situations, providing additional support. And then I will say some of our crisis forms have decreased as a result of having that additional support in the building. They're doing a great job of de-escalation and then check-ins with students and families after a crisis has taken place. We have a drug and alcohol counselor that is at Cheltenham High School. She started around the holidays as well. So that's an additional tier 2 support that they can utilize at the high school for students that may be having some struggles with drugs and alcohol. And then we have 2 additional clinicians at Elkins Park through the 4 Walls Foundation. Zori is there 3 days a week, and then Sharonda is there 1 day a week, providing mental health support and group support for students at Elkins Park. And we completed the 2024 Pennsylvania survey. So I'll be excited to talk with you all about the details of that survey come next year. So, thank you.
Ms. King, just hold tight 1 sec. So you have, how are students doing, or what are they able to do or should be able to do? You then have, where are they on the continuum? And what are those pathways and how instructionally is it being implemented? And then you have, what are the barriers potentially if they're not meeting success, but also the supports that are available in terms of giving them the assistance to unlock the learning that they should be receiving. So I'm not going to do this for every pillar, but I'm just trying to show the connectivity that this is very intentional. And that as a team, we have a pretty solid plan that we're creating. This is still a process, once this all comes together, you'll be able to see how fluid it is. Thank you, Ms. King. Thank you, Dr. Smith. I'm quiet from here on.
No, please continue. So pillar 4 is diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion. Dr. Catron and myself, we are the co-chairs for this particular pillar. And basically, our primary goal is to make sure that no matter where you are, what you do, however you do it in the Cheltenham School District, that you see our commitment to diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion. Whether that be academic subjects, whether it be how we attempt and approach social emotional wellness, how we deal with any climate and culture concerns, how we partner with external partners. We want to make sure that we are conducting ourselves the way we say, in the manner in which we say we are. So that is, and that's why this particular pillar just is, it seems like there's always something to do because it's present in everything. It does not, it's present in how we determine capital planning. It's present in the operational side as well as the educational side, because, and I believe that this strand for me really brings in the community of the Cheltenham School District community. This is kind of where, you know, we kind of marry the concept of this is about not just those of us who have children in the district or the children who attend the district, but this is truly, this particular strand really speaks to the Cheltenham School District as a whole. And so as you can see, there are multiple strategies that we are utilizing in order to meet our primary goal. And that includes internal structures, that includes external structures, that includes looking to researchers, looking to the professionals for insight. That also includes talking to other school districts and seeing what they are doing and seeing what's transferable to Cheltenham School District. What do we need to tweak? We are also using strategies that are not only specifically speaking to this pillar, but speaking to all aspects of being a part of the Cheltenham School District community. And so if we talked about making the data visible, if we had to make this visible, I would say everyone's walking around, every decision, every conversation has, how is diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion addressed? So I would say that's the visual data. Everywhere you go, you should be able to ask the question, do I see the Cheltenham School District community's commitment to diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion? And if we don't, then what do we have to do to make sure it does? Because this document and everything that you heard before this pillar and everything that you will hear after this pillar, it holds us to make sure that we do that. We started off with our mission and our vision statement, and we said we want people in our community to feel like they belong, to feel like there's justice, to feel like there's equity. So this particular strand kind of encompasses everything along those lines. In terms of performance measures, one of the things we have is the social media presence. We don't want to just keep our ideas here in Cheltenham. We want other school districts to know this is who we are. We want other communities to know this is what we stand for. When someone's looking to buy a home or deciding where they want to move, we want them to say, I've seen Cheltenham's work on social media. That's where I can see myself. That's where I can see my children attending school. We're also considering community feedback, whether it's formal feedback in the form of a survey or feedback that we hear at these meetings and Q&As during our meetings. Parents who leave feedback at the schools that their children attend. Performance measures also include incident and discipline data. Do our incident and discipline data speak to diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion? Our curriculum audit, it seems like it was a long time ago, but a lot of that data is still very fresh. Do we use our curriculum audit information to say, this is what we need to see in our curriculum documents and also how we deliver instruction? Because both of those things require us to look at this lens. Are we using materials and resources where children see themselves, regardless of how, what religion they practice, their ethnic background, the racial identity, their gender identity, regardless of anything or any characteristic that a student brings to school, do we make sure that they feel like they belong? Do they feel included? And again, the opposite side is if they don't, then what are we going to do about it? And again, classroom walkthrough data, even though classroom walkthroughs may seem like a instructional only or academic only type of exercise, it isn't, because that's where all the magic happens. That's the grassroots of our organization, is in the classrooms. Principals need to be in the classrooms to see, do the teachers implement instructional strategies that make all kids feel like there is something for me? Are teachers using the instructional materials that are approved by this school board that you all say all kids need access to these type of resources? Are they being used? Classroom walkthroughs answer those questions. And again, student belonging surveys, we partnered with the University of Pennsylvania. We give these student belonging surveys annually. And basically it speaks to, it doesn't ask students that directly, do you feel like you belong? But they get questions and survey responses that tell us, yes, I'm happy here. Yes, I'm happy here, and so are my friends. Or we have people say, I'm treated well, I'm fine, I feel like I belong, but I do know a few people who could probably use some support. And so we use that information and we pass it on to Ms. Keene and the Office of Student Services to say, whether it's 1 kid or 50 kids, here's a need, and here's a location where that need is. So we pretty much wrap this whole pillar in and out of everything that pretty much we work on. So again, you see, I'll just go to my chart first, so Dr. Scriven doesn't feel bad about his 4%. You see 0% complete, because the way that we have this set up, do you ever finish the work of making sure kids feel like they belong? We can finish the work of curriculum. We can finish and say, all of our curriculum reflects our goals around, that's that sub-task I was talking about, those subtasks. We can say our curriculum definitely reflects that. But when we talk about the larger goals and the larger task of making sure that curriculum and instruction reflect this, we're not done. We're not done. Are we getting there? Yes, we are. And so in terms of our highlights, we have student and staff participation in the DVCE workshops and initiatives. Those are all around. And so it's up there. Sorry, I was supposed to say what it means, but it's up there. So all of our, so our middle school students and our high school students have an opportunity to have conferences and leadership conferences where they share and discuss initiatives in our district, and they get to share things that they want us to do. And they also get to work alongside other students and other children and other peers in other districts, and they kind of share and collaborate. We also wanted to highlight our cultural proficiency and student and equity student ambassadors program. And this has been a Montgomery County initiative where students are put into the throes of justice, put into the throes of equity work and what they can do to help to improve some of our outcomes at the high school. Elkins Park participated in empathetic storytelling, which was also highly publicized on our social media platforms. We've been engaging more with our local Holocaust Awareness Museum, and I think considering some of the international events that have been happening, this has been very timely. And I think these highlights show that we haven't just put together a strategic plan, this is what we're going to do, and then we do it. We're saying we're going to modify, we are going to adapt as things come up, because we didn't have anywhere in our plan that we were going to increase our partnership with the Holocaust Awareness Museum Education Center. But international events said otherwise. So that's one of the good things about this being a living, breathing document where we're not just checking the boxes, it does evolve. We talk about student participation in external events to support classmates. When you talk about belonging and inclusion, it warms a student and an adult's heart to look out into an audience at a church event, at a synagogue event, at a sporting event outside of school and see the support of the Cheltenham School District. If nothing else says I belong, a moment like that does. So we want to highlight that. We've also highlighted the review of restorative practices and discipline policies, making sure the Latin root of discipline is to learn, is to teach, to make sure that we're really doing that. Title IX trainings and workshops, the HR department has not only committed us, not only, told us that we have to do these trainings, they're also making sure that we understand the meaning of it and how it helps with, again, kids and adults feeling included and feeling a part of the school community. And last but not least, we also have a membership with the Pennsylvania Educator Diversity Consortium. And with those monthly meetings and monthly sessions, again, we are always talking about what's happening in our respective school districts and not to reinvent the wheel. And it also helps us not to miss some things that we may miss because we think, well, that doesn't apply to us. And then we hear something and we're like, wait a minute, we haven't thought about that. Let's think about it differently. So these are just some highlights. This does not encompass everything that we're working on, but it is a highlight for this particular pillar. Pillar 5, I'm going to ask Mr. White to join us at the table to discuss some of the things around Pillar 5. And I think for me, I think having Mr. White as our Director of Security and Safety here in the district on this particular pillar, I think that is different. It's out of the ordinary. It's unexpected in a good way. In a good way. Because this pulls in the person who's in charge of what some of us may see as the dirty work and getting your hands dirty and keeping everyone in control. It means something that he's a part of this full picture where we're still talking about academics. We're talking about making sure students feel safe and they feel well. Because what we don't want is security and safety to have one mind frame and everyone else has another. So it's good that Dr. Scriven appointed him to be a part of this particular pillar, because that means he's working hand in hand with us. He knows the vision, he knows what we're expecting, and nobody's kind of out on their own working alone. So I do think that it was a very good idea to have Mr. White lead this particular pillar, because I think as a parent myself who sends a kid to school every day, it makes me feel good to know that all facets of the district are a part of this plan.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Dr. Scriven, for including me in the strategic plan. Greatly appreciate it. So, the primary goal in Shellingham School is to make sure our students feel safe, K through 12. Because if you're in a safe environment, you're going to learn. And also, we want to build healthy relationships within our school district. One of the big things that I'm going to talk about, and I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, is about promoting respect, empathy, and understanding with all of our students. Because if you do that, that brings the climate and the culture and the success all together. Also, we want to partner with our parents to try to bring them on board. So that way, teachers, faculty, staff are all working together for that child to move on and to grow. Some of the performance measurements, of course, the climate and culture survey has already been done. Mr. Metcalf is going to send that to me as a favor to help a brother out. Also, the measurement of student and parent guardian belonging to the district. I guess I talk about that all the time when I'm at the supermarket and I'm bumping into our parents and our students, and we're just talking in general how they feel about the school district and where we're going. One of the big things I will talk about when I talk about our climate and culture is the disconnect. The disconnect that our students have when they leave the 8th grade and they go into 9th grade. I know them from 8th grade from messing around and being in Cedar Brook. And then in the high school, when you ask them, it's like, so how are you doing? What's going on? Can you tell me how you're doing in the school? It's all right. I wish I was back in Cedar Brook. And then I have to explain to them, well, besides the new building, why do you wish you were back in Cedar Brook? And some of them talk about like the party that just took place at Cedar Brook. They felt welcome there by going to the party. They said, we don't have any parties here besides the homecoming party. And then I have to go in and explain to them, but that's about you making the experience. If you just have 25 and there's a great party, next year, because kids here, your students here, that you had a great time, more will come. So that's one thing that we work on. Of course, we always do our regular safety drills and emergency preparedness throughout the school year. Professional development with Mr. Pimental, working with him so we can get more time in front of the faculty and staff within the school district. And he has provided that this year. Next year, he kind of promised me that he'll see what he can do about getting me a little bit more time so I can talk. The emphasis on student wellness and restorative practice. So I work with a lot in great detail with Mrs. King and one of my teachers along when I first arrived, who is sitting here to my right, Dr. Smith, and restorative practice. That's something that we continue to work on here in the Cheltenham School District because, they talk about the school pipeline to prison. We don't want that. So what we're trying to do is get the children to understand, hey, you can have a disagreement, but you can come together after the disagreement, you know where that person stands and you know where the other person stands. And the one example that I know Dr. Hammond and I always use is when we had a big blowout and we were just going back and forth with each other. And we always tell students like, hey, we had a blow up, but look at us. We're buddy-buddy. We're not looking to fight. We had a talk and that was it. So that's what we try to explain to the students before they go and start doing something rational. Hey, let's try to talk it out so we can move forward during the course of the day. One of the other big things I need to throw a bone to my buddy, Mr. Holman, by making sure our schools are welcoming. Mr. Holman and I, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, we're out together, seeing what we can do to make the schools more welcoming as our students come in. I will say this, I know the schools are welcoming because back when I coached softball for a traveling team, we were allowed to use the softball field and the building. And I think I had five players that weren't from my district and they were from the city and they came there like, wow, I wish my school was like this. And I was like, yeah, we work hard at keeping it like this. So, but we know that we have welcome buildings, but we work hard on making sure that when you walk in, you really feel welcome within the building. So that's all my highlights, along with working with the administrators, like my favorite one over there, Mr. Taylor, that we always collaborate on certain things when he has questions or I have questions. But it's always still, I'm working with them. Even though my background was in education, they're also teaching me the new things. So I know more about the 21st century of teaching and learning as we move forward.
Dr. Raleigh, could you elaborate a little bit on the perceptual survey that went out last year and it's going out again this spring? Because that kind of falls under this, but other areas as well.
Yeah, so the perception survey there's a survey that's administered to all of our staff, teachers, and paraprofessionals. It's also administered to the students and then to families as well. And there are the questions range across a broad spectrum of how do they feel about the school. So the idea of feeling welcomed, feeling like they belong, feeling like their teachers like them, or students like their teacher. So they're the sorts of questions that are on there. And then the data that we get back comes to us disaggregated across a variety of different subgroups. And when we see it, though, we don't see it for each individual student. We see it overall, and then we see it by subgroup. We've taken that data that we received last year. We administered this survey at the end of last school year. The data was shared with our principals over the summer. They were given to us in line chart form. So there's a lot of information there for them to digest because every question is listed and then the average response is listed as well on a scale of 0 to 5. One of the things that's interesting is when you look at it, we see a lot of scores from like neutral to mostly agree. And so not a lot of don't agree or mostly disagree, that sort of thing. So you have to kind of like level set in terms of what you're seeing there. So who are the neutral students, if that's kind of our low point, kind of like looking at those neutral students versus students who mostly agree, or staff members, or family members. We are administering the same survey, exactly the same survey, again, at the end of this month. So the last week of February, the first week of March, that survey will go out. We keep it open for 2 weeks. Wait for the response rate. If the response rate is not exactly where we want it to be, we'll extend that a little bit longer, but we don't want to leave it wide open for weeks and weeks, months. We adjusted the timeline this year. Last year we did it at the very end of the school year. I think we had a whole school year to think about responses. It didn't leave a lot of room for us to do analysis in teams. It was handed to the principals for them to kind of digest all of that. We've adjusted that, made it a little bit sooner this year, tried to be strategic in terms of where it was placed so that we're not up against the testing season that will be coming up at the end of April and into March. We also didn't want it right at the beginning of the new semester for the high school. And so people could kind of get acclimated to their new environments. The other advantage is that data will become available to us before the school year ends. And so we'll have those results. Principals will get that. They'll be able to also share that with their teams as well.
We're trying to get to the point where that becomes part of our continuous improvement plan as a data point where we have specific actions to address the feedback that we're receiving. You guys played a role in some of this, just in terms of the incident that we had at Abington. When you look at the importance of policy, and those are things at the end of the year we'll highlight. We reviewed all of those gun policies as a result of what happened before the year even started, and we made good on something that we said we would do. We've done that with special education and continue to do that work. So we'll call out all of these as we go through the year, so you can see the specific actions under each pillar that has actually happened. And this really crosses with a lot of the work with Ms. Keene and her team under the restorative component also. And then there's different programs that we have at the high school where, rather than just suspending, we have students, and we've been working with Judge Zersky with the implementation of some programs that are more restorative in nature than punitive. So again, all pieces that fall under climate and culture outcomes. Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, Mr. White. And Mr. Kaufman should be online to speak about Pillar 6 communications.
I am here.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So Pillar 6 is communications, and I'm excited to speak with you this evening to tell you all about our progress. So we have 3 different goals, decided on a primary goal. I guess I'll read it. Develop and sustain diverse structures for communications to cultivate and strengthen two-way communication and build mutually beneficial relationships with our stakeholders to help them understand and engage the district's vision, educational plan, and challenges. And you can see some of the strategies that we've employed and will continue to employ. A lot of this stuff we are already doing, I'm happy to say. And I'll go into this goal in particular. We've made really good progress on 3 of the 4 sub goals. The website, translation services, and employee-focused communications. The other goals we've made really good progress on is the brand, as we'll see on the next slide. And the third goal, the communications planning, that'll begin this summer coming up. And as you can see, our performance measures, our calendar milestone dates, and really the completion of tasks. Next slide, Dr. Smith. Thank you very much. Just like to note, 25%. Woohoo.
Is that about 100?
No, I think we're making really good progress. So as you can see, some of the highlights we've had in the short time that we've been officially working under the plan, the branding initiative has been huge. I'll touch on that briefly for those who are not in the know on that. Dr. Scriven made sure to include our branding as a part of our strategic plan. So what we did was we partnered with the Chester County IU, whose specialty is in branding and communications. They came in and led a series of workshops with a committee of students, parents/guardians, staff, and community members. Really robust group, really great conversation. And what that all ended up with is our brand essence, our brand personality, our positioning, our promises, and most importantly for my job as the communications director is the key messages. And what we'll be doing next, I don't want to jump ahead. So we finalized the brand book, which takes all of this, all of the different segments of the brand that I just mentioned, the essence, personality, positioning, promise, and key messages, puts it in a nice, neat package. It's available on our website. We did a rollout that included an email to the community, posting on social media, in addition to nice juicy placement on our weekly news share. Excuse me. Jumping back to the first goal, the broader goal, the website falls under that as one of the sub goals. And I'm pleased to say we've landed on a new template for the website, one which is fully oh shoot, I always stumble on this word. Not reflexive. Responsive, yes, thank you. Fully responsive, looks the same exact on your phone as it does on your tablet, as it does on your desktop. It's really sharp, a lot of white space, pretty modern design. I'm really excited about it. And we're just moving that from template development into production. Also under that more broad goal, we've continued with the Cheltenham internal news share. It's called @Cheltenham. We've got different entries from across the administrative spectrum, offering updates, strictly internal release, just for employees, trying to, really target and make sure everybody knows what's going on. And then finally, one of the last goals in that broader goal, excuse me, again, is our translation services. And just one real quick thing that we've done is I've upgraded our SMORE account to be able to be translated into as many languages as there are. It's hooked in with Google, so it's got myriad languages. So that's all I have for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, pillar 7. Mr. Holman, would you like to join me? Infrastructure, facilities, and finance, and Mr. Swigert should be joining us remotely.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hey, Josh.
Good evening.
All right, Tim, why don't you get us started?
All right, thank you for having me, primary goal, analyze and compare options for the district infrastructure needs, examine the effectiveness of fiscal resource allocation through an equity lens, student growth, oriented experiences, and academic achievement. What does that make? It makes return on investment equaling equity, student growth, oriented experiences, and academic achievement. Strategies, research and benchmark against other school districts or educational institutions with similar infrastructure needs, engage with school-based construction professionals, identify best practices and successful strategies implemented by comparable organizations to inform decision-making, prioritize identified needs based on urgency, impact on teaching and learning, and alignment with the district's goals. Performance measures, calendar milestone dates, and budget and monthly financial reporting. The district's infrastructure and facilities play a crucial role in the daily operations of the schools. It is important to identify any issues or limitations that may hinder the smooth functioning of these facilities. Additionally, it is essential to assess the status of the current district facilities by categorizing the building components, as we have done with the utilization of Vera Veritas and the FMX work order system, and identifying any areas that may need improvement or renovation. This will help to ensure the facilities are up to standard and are able to support the needs of the students and staff. Data has been provided by KCBA, our architecture firm. In order to determine future district capacity needs, it is important to project student enrollment and focus on the specific grade levels at each school. This will provide valuable insight into the potential growth or decline of the student population and help in planning for our future. Our partnership with KCBA and relationship with the township will help in identifying any potential zoning related issues and making necessary adjustments to the plans prior to the beginning of construction to meet the needs of the students and staff, and also the budget. Thank you.
So moving on to the second slide, 18%. I feel pretty good about that number. Our strategic plan actually consists of 4 components. The one as Tim just described, what the most significant is taking our limited resources as a district and trying to identify and address all of our facilities issues so that we can take our district into the future and not be completely cash strapped or handicapped with the amount of resources we have to identify any future needs as well. The second goal was to develop standard operating procedures across departments, and some of the highlights we don't talk about as a result of that were the implementation of FMX, which we talked about last year, the upgrading of our facilities management system, the integration of scheduling within FMX and Schedule Star, which is still a work in process, where we'll be able to track all of our facilities usage and marry that with our sporting schedule and our staff. The implementation of Stop Finder, which was a stop identification tool that parents can use to track their students' bus ridership, and the business performance review we conducted in the business office and the human resources office to try and identify ways in which we can use our newly upgraded Power School e-finance software to better meet the needs of the district, to better help the flow of and coordination of our human resources and payroll department. So a lot of these steps have gone into place, and it feels like we've come a lot further than 18%, but some of the steps that made up that 18% are very big steps and big leaps, and some of the tasks up and coming aren't quite as big a lift. In addition to the standing operating procedures, another goal within the infrastructure, facilities, and finance pillar was the address of absenteeism and the increase of engagement with our employees. We do feel as if we have some tools we need to put in place, and have already begun the process of putting in place those tools within the business office and within the payroll department to engage with our employees, engage with our staff, and make our integration with the business office more seamless. And the final goal was to take all of this financial information that we were gathering and benchmarking, and to ensure that it was in line with the district's equity and inclusion goals. That was a goal that was set forth a year out into the future at the beginning of this whole strategic plan, which hasn't officially started yet, which is part of the reason we still have some tasks that haven't been opened yet, but look to start those soon. And with that, that is all I have.
And that is the final pillar, and we will turn things back over to Ms. Murphy for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the board? Questions or comments? Dr. White.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to all the chairs for the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Smith, for your work. This is an enlightening view of where we are at in the strategic planning process, having been there from its inception to now seeing where we are in working through some of what this looks like. Has been very helpful and useful. I the question I have is broad, and I'll frame it out, and this does not have to be answered today. The board has obviously pretty broad responsibilities, and our role as a board of 9 intersects with a lot of these areas in curriculum development and budgeting, making sure that we're allocating resources appropriately, and policy development, a wide variety of areas, which we're all aware of, thanks to the lovely education we've gotten on our responsibilities from our partners. The broad question I have, which does not have to be answered today, but something that I'm going to continuously think about as a board member, is what are the ways that you envision the board being supportive of the strategic plan moving forward? And then thinking about what are the things that I can bring as a single board member in the conversations related to the support of the strategic plan moving forward. And so I just wanted to say that like this is a living document in that our vision and our mission are well aligned with these strategic pillars, as they should be. But we are also integrally responsible for the implementation of the strategic plan. And I just wanted to I'm always big on making the implicit explicit. And so if there are ways that you can tell us hey, we really want you to think about these things as you think about policy, these things when you think about budget, that would be incredibly helpful to me. I imagine many of my colleagues.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I had one question. One, thank you for this information. It really is eye-opening to see how we progress. This is my second strategic plan, and so the things that we've implemented, things that we did in the first one and accomplished in the first one, the equity framework was one of those really important things that we were able to, initiatives that we were able to get done through that. And then seeing how we're progressing here is really good. And then having that data view is excellent. There was a lot of things that piqued my interest, and I don't know if Ms. King can answer that, but with the social, emotional, and mental health, you talked about the different support systems that are now in the schools. Are you seeing that students are accessing those supports, and how is there additional outreach? So not necessarily a student reaching out, but an adult, a leader, administrator seeing that there's something that's happening, and how's that happening for students in terms of outreach?
So I think for our definitely K through 6, they are accessing the services that they have and maximizing on them. I know they're very useful. High school, sometimes I think because it's a larger entity, sometimes the teachers don't necessarily know everything that's in that counseling office. So we can do a better job of informing them of the resources that are available so that they can make the direct referrals.
Thank you.
Second the thanks. This is a great presentation. And also Ms. Henry's comment about this being the second strategic plan that we've been witness to, it is not lost on me the tenor of this presentation and the way that it feels less like a list of check boxes, but rather this is living, breathing work that is comprehensive and really leads to the continuous processes that are in place. And it's very great. It makes me very optimistic to see that. Also picking up on Dr. Whiting's comments, it occurs to me that this moment in time is actually a very important moment to reflect on what resources and structural supports at a board level are needed, because we're at the beginning of our budget process for next year, which is going to be a key year for the strategic plan. And we are our largest contract expires in June. And so are there any things we need to be thinking about as a board in terms of supports that we should be working for in that? So just, again, that's not a comment for discussion, but those 2 points are not lost on me. And I feel like the folks in the room who are not board members are the ones who are going to know what needs to actually be included in those to have success. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Riddell.
I'll be brief. Also, do want to second just that the reflection of the way that the information has been disseminated is, it's rewarding for me in a way, because I know that, going back to the previous strategic plan, there were, conversations about how we're presenting data and information, and, how are we we're tracking milestones, et cetera. And I greatly appreciated the visuals for sure. I think that's also something that with the previous strategic plan, we lacked quite a bit, right? There was a significant amount of information transfer. And I think for those of us who are not necessarily in education, seeing the data helps me digest the fact that there's progress and we're tracking all of that. The other aspect of this that I think I just want to cover, just also from as one board member, but also taking a step back as a community member, I can say that the majority of what I have heard discussed today, I've heard at committee meetings prior to now. So I've greatly appreciated, was one of the board members fully supported having these periodic check-ins, mostly for the community, right? And also to just reiterate as a community member, you know, we're watching, right, and paying attention that these are literally the pillars of what we're discussing every day. Or at least that's what I'm seeing. And so just appreciate the synergy there, and that it is not a checkbox activity, and it's not like just happening, right? It's like, oh yeah, strategic plan, we're doing that thing. I do definitely feel like it's very much so embedded in what we do. I know that all of the very high achievers that we have on the admin team see 0%, 4%, 25 and 44. I know what that means. Trust me. But I know that there's a bunch of work going there, and I understand steps to milestone progress, right? And what it means to start somewhere and set intermediate goals and try to reach them. So again, no questions, just a bunch of reflection in the moment on a variety of things. Just grateful for all the work that's going into it as well.
Yes, Ms. Mama.
Yes, two, not so much questions, but thank you again to everyone for being here and sharing with us tonight. One, I wanted to appreciate, I think Dr. Riley and Mr. White both mentioned, and I think I appreciate it anytime it happens kind of what seems to be organically in a meeting, talking about those professional development days, those Wednesdays, showing to us, to the community, how we are using that time. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And I would say, Dr. Smith, talking about your pillar, talking about diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion, and talking about how that kind of is the one that connects all of the pillars and how important and integral it is to all of our work. It just reminds me of, how, at least I know not just myself, but other board members may at times try to center ourselves on our equity policy and our equity statement to remind us. Yeah, it comes back to that. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate you calling it out.
Not seeing any other board members with comments. Do we have comments from? Do we have any comments on the virtual public? We do not. Okay. Then it is time to end the meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Charles.
I'm waiting to see how long it was gonna take.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any